Bethesda's upcoming RPG Starfield has certainly stolen the show at Gamescom this year, but it wasn't alone, and there were actually quite a few great strategy games, as well as some hidden gems. So in this video, we're going to take a look at the highlights from Gamescom's opening night live, as well as the Future Games show. Let's jump in. And first and foremost, we're looking at Endzone, which, while it did have a trailer, I think we should first look at some of the screenshots that were also released because they give a little bit more detail into what was largely a cinematic trailer for this colony simulator come post-apocalyptic city builder. And Endzone 2 really does one key thing that I want you to take away from this footage. Not only does it provide a city builder where you have, townsfolk effectively, these people who are trying to survive, you need to get resources, build up, but it also has an adventure element to it. You choose your starting location by driving around in your van that you can see as highlighted here, but also vehicles play a larger role in expanding and exploring out into the world, because it's not just about building a base at home, but also about exploring other zones. I'm interested in Endzone, releasing in Q1 2024 in early access. Secondly, on my list, from Hooded Horse, the publishers, we have Hexxen Hunters. This one more of an indie title, and one that I'm quite looking forward to. The setting is 18th century, and you are a band of hunters, essentially tasked against fighting the forces of hell in a turn-based tactical RPG. There's obviously a bit of a story element to it, and you can see that story element playing out on screen. It also, I would note, has a very distinct art style, one that you may have seen sort of inspirations from other RPGs, but it is quite unique in its display. As you can see, you explore the world with your band Mary of Four, which I'm sure a lot of you are used to be doing at the moment, at least with Baldur's Gate 3 having recently come out on PC. So it will lean into that a little bit. It's allegedly quite a story-rich strategy RPG as well. And crucially, I think, it's a blend of real-time exploration with then the classic sort of turn-based tactical combat that you might expect from this kind of RPG. The story itself begins by liberating a remote hamlet, and again, this sort of 18th century, I believe, southern German setting. And once you've established that, built up a base of operations, you can loot up, gear up, continue to explore, expand, get better technology, so on and so forth. Thirdly, on our list, we have a title that's just far too long to fit onto any kind of title banner. This, my friends, is Warhammer, Age of Sigmar, Realms of Ruin, and releasing on the 18th of November 2023, so not long to go now. This is, of course, the latest rendition of the Warhammer franchise, a strategy, action, real-time strategy to be specific, fantasy setting, obviously, as you can tell by the ghosts and ghouls on your screen. Now, I probably don't need to tell you too much about Warhammer in general as a franchise, or the Total War franchise, or many others that share this kind of genre, the action blended with real-time strategy. We do know, of course, a few details about Warhammer Age of Sigmar, Realms of Ruin. We know for a fact that there are 4 main factions inside of the campaign, 4 major factions, I should say. I'm sure many others outside. You can briefly see them on the screen throughout the trailer, but you do have to be quick. But they're probably one of the less important factors because largely the trailer demonstrates a lot of the combat, which is of course real-time strategic combat on a scale a little bit smaller perhaps than the likes of Total War, but still nothing to be scoffed at, and plenty of unit types and hopefully customization options here too. The next item on my list, Ara History Untold, releasing in 2024. This one published by Xbox and developed by Oxide Games. I actually have a full dedicated video about right here on the channel because it is a perfect fit for the kinds of games that I traditionally play here. It's a strategy game. It's a 4X sort of blended with grand strategy. They're really pushing, actually, by the way, the grand strategy dialogue behind this much harder than the likes of a game that you should rightly compare it to. Let's say Civilization 6. I mean, take a look at this role of historical leaders here inside of Ara History Untold, just as a brief taste from the most recent gameplay trailer that was, of course, released at Gamescom. I think that it's a great fit for the channel, as I was saying, and I think more specifically to do with Ara History Untold, there are a few unknowns. How does the grand strategy element particularly play out? Well, in practice, as we discussed, we know a few things, like the game's eras will be bundled into 3 acts, and those with the lowest scores, or sort of progress, if you will, at the end of each act will be eliminated from the game. And of course, there's a warfare element to it as well. The combat system, something we're also yet to see much of, except for a few scenes that you just witnessed there in the trailer. Ara History Untold is a 4X alternative history, but historically grounded strategy game releasing in 2024. Next on my list, a more indie title, Menace, releasing in, again, 2024. Menace, published by Hooded Horse and developed by Overhype Studios, is a tactical RPG, and it's one that's drawn my particular focus as someone who has long been a fan of the XCOM franchise. You don't really need to convince me too hard if there's, say, a tactical sci-fi strategy RPG game, and that's exactly what this is. But some points of difference to note here. Missions themselves don't just take place on one battlefield, but can stretch across multiple, and the gameplay itself is allegedly endlessly replayable, with procedurally generated multi-mission operations for you to play. And of course it incorporates all the kinds of things that you would love, turn-based tactical combat, although in this setting, a lot more vehicles, mechs, robots, that kind of thing, obviously. The kind of stuff that you're seeing in the trailer here. I think it should bring some, hopefully, new life, a bit of a refresh to the setting, as well as provide those extra things, with almost some kind of roguelike element to the way that it's generating the missions, although that could of course come at the expense of a truly rich story. We'll have to wait and see when Menace releases some stage in 2024. That is at least the planned release date right now. The next item on my list, in a slightly brighter setting than Menace, this, my friends, is SteamWorld Build, from the creators of other SteamWorld games such as SteamWorld Dig, SteamWorld Heist, and SteamWorld Dig 2. Look, I'm taking the mick a little bit, but this one is actually quite a bright and flavorful city builder come simulation game from Thunderful Publishing and Thunderful Development. And this one sells itself really on doing the basics well, very well. For starters, build. Of course, this is a game all about building a town, and you have to do just that. You'll also use the natural resources, underground, ores, etc. to build and expand your town. Secondly, the management element. There's a lot of sort of management involved in how you build things, how you upgrade them, different interfaces, different efficiency upgrades to use. As you can see on the screen, it uses a grid-like pattern for doing that. And then finally, of course, there's quite a lot of mining involved here, as you can see. Underground, underneath the city and in the earth, and inside of that there will be enemies for you to fight as well. So there's a combat layer here in terms of, at least sort of vaguely, in terms of mining and exploration. I wouldn't go quite as far as to say that it's strictly a tower defense. That might be just a little bit prescriptive here, though you can see and sort of get a little bit of a feel that there's a tower defense style to defending your mines and combat here. And what I should remind you, Above World is, of course, a game about building a city and building a settlement. I think it's bright and colorful, and that's why I made it on my list. And finally, we have Castlecraft, QubiQuest, Castlecraft. Okay, this is in pre-alpha footage, and of course, you might notice with craft in the name, it does look a bit like Minecraft, but there's a twist here. This is not just about smashing down a tree, but instead about building a castle and then defending it. We talked about tower defense earlier. Well, there's definitely a tower defense vibe coming out of this game, but of course in a sort of a slightly different setting. This is not a bird's eye view setting. This is a walk around like you might in Minecraft, build a building, get your dudes, and then try and defend your colony. So in many ways, it's merging that kind of creative aspect of Minecraft with perhaps a tower defense action simulation element to it as well. You can see some really interesting enemies, vehicles, weapons in the trailer, and for pre-alpha footage, it honestly doesn't look too bad, and that's why it's made it here at the end of my list. Thank you very much for joining me today, everybody. Leave me some love below, and I'll see you next time.